"How dare you come into the house of God looking like that?" The usher's voice cut through the quiet morning air like a sharp blade. People turned their heads. Some looked away. Some stared. But the thin old beggar standing near the church doors did not move. His clothes were torn. His shoes were cracked. His beard was rough and gray, and yet his eyes held a calm that made the moment strangely heavy. No one in that room knew the truth. The man they were pushing away was their new pastor. Sunday morning sunlight spilled across the wide stone steps of Grace Hill Church, warming the polished doors and the clean white walls. Families arrived dressed in their best clothes. The smell of perfume and fresh coffee drifted through the air. Children laughed as they ran ahead of their parents. It looked like a place full of kindness, but at the bottom of the steps stood a man who did not belong in their world. He looked thin and tired. His jacket hung loose around his shoulders. The cloth was faded and torn at the sleeves. Dust covered his shoes. His beard had grown long and uneven, and his hair fell around his face like he had not seen a mirror in months. He slowly climbed the church steps with a gentle, careful walk. A few people noticed him right away. Their smiles faded. Some whispered to each other. One woman pulled her child closer to her side. The man reached the doorway and stopped. His eyes moved across the church building with quiet wonder. As if he was studying every detail inside those tired eyes lived years of wisdom, but no one could see it. Because today, he looked like nothing more than a beggar. His name was Pastor Daniel Harper, and this was his first day, leading the church, years earlier. Daniel Harper had lived a very different life before he became a pastor. He had served as a military chaplain. He had walked through dusty camps and quiet hospitals. He had prayed beside wounded soldiers and held the hands of men who knew they might never see home again. Daniel had seen courage in places most people never imagined, he remembered. The smell of cold metal and engine oil in the early mornings. He remembered the sound of boots stepping across gravel before sunrise. He remembered the quiet voices of soldiers whispering prayers before long missions, but what stayed with him most were the moments of humanity. The soldier who gave his blanket to a wounded friend, the young recruit, who wrote letters to families of fallen teammates, the medic who stayed awake for 3 nights straight just to watch over injured men who were afraid to sleep. Daniel learned something during those years true. Strength was not loud. True honor did not need applause. It lived quietly inside people who chose kindness even when the world was hard. When the war ended, Daniel carried those lessons home with him. He studied theology and eventually became a pastor. But he never forgot what he had seen, and he never forgot the simple truth that shaped his heart. People reveal their character when they believe no one important is watching. So, when Grace Hill Church invited him to become their new pastor, Daniel made an unusual decision. Before introducing himself to the congregation, he wanted to see their hearts, not the polished version they showed on Sunday morning, the real one, the one they showed to strangers. That was why he now stood at the entrance of his own church, dressed like a forgotten man. A tall usher blocked the doorway. His suit was perfect. His tie was sharp. His smile was polite but firm. He looked Daniel up and down with clear discomfort. The usher spoke again, louder this time. "You can't stay here. This is a private service." Daniel simply nodded and stepped aside. He did not argue. He did not explain. He just stood quietly near the door. Inside the church hall, soft music floated through the air. Rows of clean wooden benches filled the room. Bright stained glass windows painted the walls with gentle colors. Daniel slowly walked inside and sat on the last bench in the back corner. People noticed him immediately. Some turned their heads away. A few whispered to each other. One man leaned toward his wife and shook his head with disapproval. No one greeted him. No one asked if he was hungry. No one asked if he needed help. Minutes passed, then a woman approached him carefully. She held a small purse tightly in her hands. Her voice was quiet but cold. "You should probably leave before the pastor arrives." Daniel simply nodded again. He remained seated. The room slowly filled. More than 200 people gathered for the morning service. They sang songs. They shared announcements. They waited for the moment when their new pastor would finally appear. The church leader stepped forward and spoke proudly. "Today, we welcome our new pastor, a man chosen after much prayer and careful search." People clapped politely, but their smiles faded when the leader added one more sentence. "Before he begins, we will show a short video about compassion and service." The lights dimmed slightly as the screen lowered. Then the church leader turned and looked toward the back of the room. His voice echoed across the hall. "Pastor Daniel, would you please come forward?" The congregation waited. No one moved. The leader smiled and repeated the words, "Pastor Daniel Harper, please join us at the front." And then the old beggar in the back slowly stood up. The entire room went silent. 200 people watched as the man they had ignored began walking toward the stage. Every step felt heavy with realization. Some faces turned pale. Others stared in disbelief. The usher near the door froze in place. Daniel reached the front of the church and turned toward the congregation. For a moment, he said nothing. He simply looked at them. Not with anger, not with pride, but with quiet sadness. Then he spoke calmly. "This morning I asked God for one simple thing. I asked to see the true heart of this church." He paused gently. "And today, I saw it." The room held its breath. Daniel continued with soft honesty. "Many of you sang beautiful songs about love, but when a tired stranger walked through the door, most of you looked away. Some lowered their heads in shame. Others wiped tears from their eyes." Daniel's voice remained calm but firm. "Kindness is not proven by words spoken in comfort. It is proven by actions taken when love feels in convent." Then he shared a quiet truth that settled deep into every heart in that room. A church is not measured by the beauty of its building. It is measured by the way it treats the person standing outside its doors. The silence that followed felt sacred. One elderly woman slowly stood from her seat. Tears rolled down her face as she walked toward the stage. She looked at Daniel with trembling hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered softly. "I saw you, and I did nothing." Daniel stepped forward and gently took her hand. "Kindness always begins with one brave heart," he said. Soon, others stood as well. The usher walked forward slowly, his shoulders heavy with regret. He lowered his head and spoke with quiet honesty. "I judged you before I knew you." Daniel placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "The strongest people are the ones who can admit when they were wrong." Then Daniel looked out across the entire room. His voice carried a calm strength that filled the church. The world does not need louder churches. It needs kinder ones. And remember this simple truth. The way you treat the weakest person in the room reveals the strongest truth about your heart. The congregation slowly rose to their feet. But this time, the applause was different. It was not polite. It was not routine. It was filled with humility and respect. People stood together in silent understanding, not just welcoming their new pastor, but welcoming a new beginning for themselves. That morning changed Grace Hill Church forever. The people became more aware of the quiet battles others carried. They greeted strangers with warmth. They opened their doors wider than before. And every Sunday, the congregation remembered the lesson their pastor had shown them. That kindness is not a grand gesture. It is 1,000 small choices made with a gentle heart. Because sometimes the greatest test of character arrives quietly, dressed like someone the world has forgotten. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share where you are watching from. Tell us in the comments what kindness means to you. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet strength and unseen heroes among us.